Bam. Now we'll look organized too.
So yeah, I guess I'll just jump in. Thank you for being willing to do this for us, Colin.
Yeah.
Um, I'm excited to hear your responses. So I'll just start with the first one and we can work our way down. Uh, so the first question is if you can just please tell us about the organization that you worked for and what was your path to the leadership position at that organization?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I am currently an employee at Priestley Mental Health, and until like I think it was like maybe December, I've been the program director there. And so the clinic that we're at, it is the only clinic in Franklin County, Idaho, that targets mental health. We're the only like full service clinic, so we have a pretty large caseload here and a pretty big spot in the community because we're the only ones that can bill Medicaid and the only ones that have programs that just are all encompassing. The way I got here, so I am not, just so we're clear, I am not an LCSW. I made a conscious decision early on in my human services career to not become a clinician. It was not right for me. And so I came into where I'm at now through behaviorism. I was a behaviorist at the local hospital, and I trained in behaviorism there for a little over a year. Decided that behaviorism was not for me, and then started on with Priestley Mental Health doing CBRS, which is just it's psychiatric rehabilitation. I don't know where you are all located, but in Idaho, CBRS is just it's what the state of Idaho refers to as psychiatric rehabilitation. And it's like skills-based targeted, like targeted skills teaching to people with functional deficits and specifically children with serious emotional disturbance diagnoses. And so that is what I did with just on a bachelor's degree, and then went back to college to graduate school and did my master's in education, focusing on counselor education. And then while I was in my master's program, got promoted to a program manager, and then the program director over just the programs here. So that was long, and it's been a long day. So these answers are gonna suck. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. It's interesting that you did make that conscious decision, but then you also pivoted again um, when you just after that year that you just decided that that also wasn't for you. And so I think that's good that you're able to, you know, not only know yourself, but know that you don't want to just stay in an area because you've done the work. Like
Right.
it's not worth it.
Yeah. I probably have it's probably a fatal flaw that I pivot a little too much, but
No, it's good. I can ask the next question unless either of you guys have that up and you guys want to join.
Yeah, I do have it up, but I guess I just had kind of a follow-up question. And maybe this is leaning more into the leadership because we're kind of learning a lot about leadership in this, course.
right.
What is it like leading people who have different backgrounds in human services? Because I
Oh,
know at our facility we have like psychology, we've got family studies, that's my background, social work, sociology, like all the things, what is that like?
well, and Tessa, you kind of have an advantage in this, I think, because we do know each other, but
Mhm.
I love it. It is my favorite thing. Like I love a good social worker. When somebody comes in and they have a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's degree in social work, and I'm like, I got it. You're a social worker. Hopefully you specialize. Social workers specialize. Gosh dang it, specialize. Um, but what I love is that we have so many people that come in that have their, especially undergrad degrees in psychology or undergrad degrees in family studies. We've had people with undergrad degrees in general studies that did like clusters and things that allowed them to meet state requirements to do what they do. One of the best clinicians that I know started with her bachelor's degree in women and gender studies, and that has like worked really well. What I have loved about it is that people can bring in these different backgrounds that allow us to be more person-centered in when we assign a provider to a client. So we'll have somebody come in with an intake, like through the intake process, they come in, they start counseling. The clinician realizes pretty quickly that they need some targeted services or support programs outside of counseling. And it's so nice to be able to go through, sit down with like a kid or an adult, get to know them a little bit, and then realize like, whoa, we have got a provider with the perfect unique background for this. Like I have seen people with like degrees in dance that have been incredible social workers because they can just tap into that, artists. So that's been really nice. The downside on the leadership end is it is hard to go into a situation assuming that we all have the same basic understanding of a situation, and then realize that I have maybe misunderstood somebody's education or training or background in something. So things that I forget, just having been in the field for a while, that I forget aren't common knowledge. If you like maybe got a bachelor's degree in, say, English, and then or like English and education, and they kind of we've had several people that have come in through the education background, like that's where they got their human services experiences as educators, and that is so great, especially if we can send them into the local school district and have them do school services there. But I think the hardest part is on the training side, just making sure that all of the bases are being covered. It feels on the management end like we have to repeat a lot of trainings that sometimes I'll find myself being like, oh, like if we all came from a similar background, maybe we wouldn't have to do that quite so much. But overall, I would say with the diverse backgrounds, more positives than negatives. And the things that are negative, quotes around that, are pretty easily addressed. So that's my answer.
Perfect. Maybe I'll give someone else a turn to ask a question now or follow the interview questions.
Can I just confirm which questions we're referring to? I know I'm a little late to the party, but
yeah.
Is it from the leadership perspectives?
In rural and tribal communities.
Yeah, that's the one. And it should be the set is under instructions. And then it has.
So we're on question 2.
So there's 6 questions right there.
Okay. Were we following an order, or I could just choose anyone?
No, I did the first one, and then so we're on the second one.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little unorganized.
No, you're good.
Okay. All right. So I'm jumping into question 3. We did 1 and 2. I'm jumping into question 2.
Yeah, I just asked a random one. It wasn't assigned.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for that.
No, it's fine.
All right. Okay. So Colton, what challenges have you faced working in your specific community, and can you provide an example of that?
Challenges. Okay. Yeah, this one, listen, I hope that I'm coming across as an understanding and generous person, and that this answer does not undermine that, because I don't mean it to. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have being in a rural community is the very, like I think I would say that it has to do with the rural or even tribal nature of our community that we're in. It is pretty common. A lot of our providers are from this area. It's pretty common to assign a provider to a new client and find out that they are cousins, or find out that they are in the same church groups, or find out that their mothers do book club together, or things that bring up dual roles a lot. Like the dual roles thing, because it's a small community, it's constantly like, oh my gosh, dual roles again. And so trying to avoid those dual roles, but doing the best that we can. And so that's part 1. And then part 2, related in my mind, and I hope I expressed this clearly. The area that we're in, I think it's has to do with that small town tribal nature of it. They and I'm using tribal just meaning like almost cliques in this small town, like, this rural area that we're in.
Yeah,
They
and maybe it would be a good idea to use the term cliques just because this is also talking about tribal communities for people who live in like Native American or indigenous
which is why I was clarifying. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
just so when I say tribal, I do not mean First Nations people or Native American. I mean like these close-knit communities of people that anyway, my point is and hopefully this connects. There seems to be a general consensus from a lot of people in this area that like mental health is not real, that it is it's incredibly stigmatized in the area. I think a lot of it has to do with it's a very conservative religious community, which is wonderful. A lot of people find strength in that, but just as far as running a mental health clinic in the area, there's a lot of stigma, and that stigma gets a lot stronger depending on those circles of people that we're talking in, or that we're talking about. Some groups that just like, like they really view mental health as something that is negative, or something that is not masculine, or something that is sinful.
Yep.
Like,
we
you don't have anxiety.
Yeah, just on a related note, because we do work together, we had one of our managers talk about how they heard that in church someone gave like a talk about how, or not a talk, but like gave some comments about how like mental health was from sin, and if you don't sin, you won't have mental health problems. It's like, not really right.
And and that gets hard. And I think the hardest part, and again, I did not mean to misuse the word tribal. When I'm thinking of like these cliques, I mean like this
like status maybe.
Yeah, I mean like these groups that they're very, very, very close knit. A lot of them in this area are close knit because they share religious commonalities or a religious background, and because they find so much camaraderie in those groups, maybe they don't always realize that there are lots of people that are excluded from those groups and are kind of out on the fringes of society, even in our little community, and those people are often neglected by society. They often have like that thwarted belongingness. If we pull in some of that of Joyner's theory, I don't know if you've read any of that, but like that, like these people that want to belong, they want to fit in, and they just kind of get pushed out. And maybe these cliques that don't realize that there are groups of people that get excluded. That is really amorphous. I hope that made sense and was useful. I will keep my answer shorter moving forward.
No, it's fine. How do you overcome that kind of a challenge, though, if we're talking more about like question 2? Like, I guess that actually leans into question 3. So like, how do you manage it? What kind of skills help that leadership wise?
We're doing our best. A lot of it diverse, hiring diverse employees, making sure that we are intentionally hiring people that can be parts of all of these different cliques or these different subgroups in the community. So we have got people like that are hunters, and they're like really, like those manly men that can really click with those, with the rural men in this area that think that mental health is not for them. They can see these examples of people that are like them, people that fit in their groups and their people that just share the same worldviews, or the same mental schemes that they have that are here. And so that's probably the first one, is just making sure that we are hiring from a diverse population, and that we have a lot of representation within, as best we can in our rural area. And then the second one is community involvement. We have a lot of employees here that go to churches and give presentations on Sunday about mental health and answer questions. We are involved in a lot of fairs. We do the parade, which has been wonderful. We have this big parade, very rural, big parade in the summers, and we've had a lot of success having a literal float in the community parade. So that's the best we've been able to do so far anyway.
So what would you say would be an opportunity that your communities provide, like, if that makes sense?
Like opportunity for community engagement, or what do you mean by
so because you're in such a rural area, what is it that that you guys are able to provide, like for your community that may be something that, wouldn't have been, like, if you guys weren't there, you said you're the only one. So if you weren't there, so what is that,
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That's a good question. So things that we can provide that would not be here if we weren't here, if we just start there. So our clinic offers things like obviously counseling and psychotherapy. We're it. So if we're not here, the poor social worker at the local hospital is going to be really overwhelmed. So just starting right there. And then the biggest thing though, because we're in a rural area, we don't have like a YMCA. We don't have like a Boys and Girls Club. We don't have anything specifically for the youth. We've got sports. So a lot of kids play football. And if you don't play football, there's not a lot to do. And at our clinic, we offer a lot of youth services. And so we have like a lot of things that we can bill Medicaid for because we are in I don't know, I'm not going to say like impoverished area, but a lot of kids that are on Medicaid that are able to come to our clinic and do a lot of like one-on-one. We used to do like group bingo a lot, and that was the thing is these kids come over to the clinic and we do bingo.
We have
And then
respite services for kids and families too. It's pretty important.
Yep. We've got respite. We have case management. So a lot of stuff that targets the youth. As far as things like targeted care coordination, I genuinely do not know where anybody would go if we were not here. Like, I think we have the only 2 targeted care coordinators in this like part of the state. So we have things like that, and then but opportunities that come from that. And this kind of goes back to my answer to the last one. One of the ways that we've been able to plug in well with the community is by teaming up with the other social service groups in the community. For example, the hospital, they have a developmental disabilities agency that we work with very closely. Probation, we work very closely with probation. And then the public library. We've had a lot of success doing community classes at the public library through grants, where we go in as the mental health providers and we teach like youth groups. I had an awesome youth group over the summer for high school kids that had awesome turnout.
We have a grief group too, don't we? That we do.
Yes, yep. We have a grief group, and then we have a women's group that meets once a month, and they just get together and do whatever those ladies want to do, and good for them. So I hope that was a good answer. I don't know.
It sounds like a lot of stuff that community wouldn't have.
Yeah, no, it would not be here. It would not be here if we were not here.
That's good.
All right, so, I'll jump into the next question, or if anyone wants to go.
No, yeah.
All right. So Colton, you described a lot of very unique opportunities that you provide for your community. What leadership skills do you have that support your ability to do that?
I don't know what leadership skills I have, but I think probably the biggest one that the one thing I will say that in my tenure as the program director, one thing that I'm very proud of that I think I did well and that I really enjoyed, maybe that I enjoyed doing, was being able to be genuinely empathetic toward our providers. Because we are the only clinic here, burnout is huge. We have massive turnover, like ridiculous turnover here. And one thing that I feel has been really important and that I've been able to help with is being able to acknowledge like, oh, like this person seems, like they're a lot quieter than they've been, like they seem like they're pretty stressed, and being able to check in with them and like just genuinely being able to care. Being way less numbers focused than I think maybe a lot of directors would be, and more just like checking in. Maybe like we'll get together and go to dinner. Sometimes it's just providers, and just make sure that everybody is being taken care of. That providers are engaging in self-care, so that they can like decompress. And then I think the next thing, I hope I'm not deviating from your question. I'm sorry if I am. It's been a long day.
No, you're good. Yeah, this is
great. Good. And then the other thing is doing my best to make sure that providers are adequately trained. I think probably the number one thing that leads to burnout in my experience is providers who are just doing their dang best. They're jumping in, clinicians and support staff that are so passionate about what they do. They know so much, but they're in these difficult situations that they're not quite trained enough for. Trained enough that they get in there and they do their best, but they're stressed out by it. Right. And just, I've learned that, like if we make sure that they are just trained well enough that when they go into a situation, that it is what they expected to have happen because of their training, then it just goes better for the client, for the community, and for the provider. And Tessa, I'm sure you could speak on that and all of the times that I did not do a great job making sure everybody was trained. But those are probably my two biggest things as far as management in a situation like this.
I think there's other barriers to training too, to be honest. I think you did a pretty good job. Yeah. And so I'm gonna input a question here. Just I'm trying to give us some stuff to write about too for like leadership versus management stuff, which is what we've focused a lot on these last couple of weeks. Management is like a lot of productivity focus, like chop, chop, chop. What do you notice that you do that's different versus management and leadership, more focused on the leadership end? And like, when have you noticed maybe management styles not working as well or failing, I guess?
Oh, geez.
Yeah, sorry, that sounds like a loaded question. I apologize.
No, it's not. Tessa, I am a terrible manager. I've always been a terrible manager. Listen, I will get better. But as far as like that productivity, as far as that, like, checking in and making sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing. I mean, obviously I'll do that, like we have to be like, like strong ethical providers that are, sticking to our roles. But I definitely, we've seen a lot of issues with maybe people in administration that lean more toward that managerial style. One thing that, pretty controversial is, there was a time where there was maybe an expectation at the clinic that managers would call clients and check in on the clients about how their providers were being. And there was nothing wrong with that. That's great. But it was like a little more numbers focused. And a lot of the providers ended up feeling like they were like being micromanaged or they weren't being trusted by administration. And I would, in a situation like that, much prefer the provider be trained well enough that they have clean clinical notes that are easy to track and easy to follow, that they are able, to be trained enough that they can reach out to, like parents of clients or to clients themselves and, and ask like, how are things, like, how are you doing? And so a lot of that is maybe having providers that are trained well enough that they can run their own show, and then as leadership, trusting that they are running their own show. And obviously, doing in-house audits and everything to make sure things are looking clean, but not in a way to like micromanage. And then the other thing, because we bill so much Medicaid, I've seen with management versus leadership, a lot of this management style that gets really billable hours focused. Like, hey, like Medicaid approves 3 hours a week for this service. So you really need to be encouraging your clients or the people that you work with to receive 3 hours of services a week, whether or not that client needs 3 hours. Does that make sense? This idea that like, well, when we get on the management end, like the more hours that we can bill a client for, the more money comes into the clinic. Hate that. Like it's never gone well. It's never been successful. And so I think on the leadership end, remembering that we are supposed to, instead of being finance focused or money focused or hours focused, we're supposed to be client focused, provide person-centered services, which Tessa's heard me like rant about a lot, but person-centered services, meet the client where they're at, and then move forward from there. I don't know. That was, guys, I'm sorry. It has been such a long day. These are so rambly. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop talking. I hope there was something good there.
No, that was awesome. And it reminded me of my last internship where it kind of felt like sales to an extent, right? Because you're looking for certain things to like talk about and bill for. So I totally resonate with like what you're saying as like a newer social worker. So you're speaking good stuff. You're not rambling. It's good.
Good. I'm like, okay, good. I thank you for validating me.
So we can go on. There's one more question. But we might have follow-ups, so don't take that as solid. But so what advice do you have for social workers like us that are seeking to work or live or engage with a more rural community?
Okay. I should have read these questions first. I'm sorry. This is on me. I hope that you all get a really great grade on this and that this is beneficial to everybody. I think my answer is gonna connect back to the answers that I've already given. My experience, I can really only speak for this rural community. I mean, I don't know. I used to live in Oklahoma and it was kind of the same. But no, like a lot of it is just that there is a clannishness that happens in rural communities. I mean, I know it happens everywhere, but rural communities, I don't know what your experiences are with them, but they have like their own flavor to this clannishness that they can get, where they they know each other, they're, like they've been here for a long time. And that clannishness can sometimes be really hard to break through with mental health services. This is going back to like the problems that we've had here with, in this, particular clans that can happen in this area with them, thinking things like, oh, like if you're clinically depressed, like you're not actually clinically depressed. They don't know what they're talking about. Like you just need to pray more. You're just a sinner, like that. And so a lot of just understanding that when we're in areas like this, being culturally competent and aware, which as social workers, like we're told that all the time. But I think the thing that really got me is when I used to hear cultural competence, I would think like, okay, so I am like a rural white man. And so cultural competence is like understanding like what it's like to be like a Chinese American. I need to be aware of that. And not realizing that cultural competency goes all the way down to just like family units from like my neighbors, like realizing that I need to be culturally competent enough to understand what my neighbors are going through who are just like next to me and look like me and we seem to be the same. This seems disconnected. It's not, it's really connected in my head, I swear. But I don't know, just putting in the effort to be culturally aware of what it is like for these people that live in a rural community, and maybe how some things can come across as like aggressive or can come across as scary or intimidating when we start to say things like, oh, like I know that just using our example again, I know like that you've been taught and you truly believe that mental health problems are because of like religious problems or spiritual sickness or things like that, and maybe there's there could totally be an element of that, but also like you could just be low on serotonin and dopamine, right? Like it could just be like just bump up the dopamine a little bit and you're good to go. Or it could be like, oh, like have you heard of trauma? Because that can happen. And just finding ways to navigate that without being triggering to people that aren't used to that kind of speech and that kind of discussion. I don't know. This might be way too specific, but it's happened a lot to me in this area.
Yeah.
So
I will say a lot of this does feel very specific to our area because it is a very interesting area. You know what I mean? With where we
weird
live.
in a positive way. That wasn't supposed to sound negative. Weird in a
I think
unique,
that
quirky way.
I think it's good though, because like I come from California, but I lived in Missoula, which is still bigger, but it's not big. So I still would consider it rural. And I saw a lot of that, especially with church stuff. I'm a pastor originally, and so like going into a more rural church, I do see a lot of people that are like, there's spiritual trauma and there's, all of that, but that leads into, well, maybe you just have some trauma, like
right.
maybe it's it's a little bit of both. But them just, like really wanting to just kind of pray it out of you, and like because of the generational aspect of it, which is what you said, so many people know your family and so knows so and so you don't want to look like you're not enough for them, and so you're like, oh, I'm just gonna pray more, because too many people know my family and I don't want to like put a bad name on us.
Yes.
There's also a really interesting book. This is going to be on another slightly side note rant, but it's called The Status Game. And it's based on like evolutionary psychology and how people evolve to kind of play status games, with their communities and with cliques, and to try and evolve and develop to like fit somewhere. And so it's like it plays into a lot of religion and like people like who hold very on to like beliefs like that, because it's just like that's like their core. It's how we survived as a species. It's a very interesting book, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been, I don't know how often, it's so many times that I'll be in like again, and Idaho has this really cool thing where we can bill for teaming meetings, which is where like a clinician and support staff and parents and kid, we can all get together and we can like have a little powwow about the treatment plan and we can bill for it, and it's so nice. And I have had so many times where I'll be in an initial teaming meeting with like a kid that has like disruptive behavior disorder and ODD, and we're there to kind of start some targeted skills building to help with that. And I'll have like a mom or a dad just be like, I don't know where I've gone wrong. I pray every day and I read the Bible every day. And acknowledging that, like, okay, the way I respond to that, I can't undermine what they just said, or they will be able to tell. Like if I'm, if I like roll my eyes, if I, and so being like, oh, and I'm like so glad, like I can tell from what you just said that you care and that you're invested as a parent. And sometimes, and so trying to validate what they just said, while also being like, also we could do a little psychoeducation right now about how maybe also, like how often you read the Bible doesn't necessarily always relate to whether or not your kid is going to have disruptive behavior disorder. So I don't know, but
Yeah. And then something that I did want to like ask about a little bit, like because you talked a lot about like having people who connect well, like trying to hire from a leadership perspective, like people who connect to other people. How does that also, like, I know you talked about kind of like, oh, let's, for people who feel like maybe threatened by mental health, like having someone relate to them. How about people who fit in more like minority groups, How do you feel like that works in a leadership position?
Again, so important, so important. Hard to do here where, this rural community that we're in is like predominantly white, predominantly Caucasian, and then with a robust Hispanic population, which is wonderful. And that's kind of, as far as like racial diversity, kind of where it ends here. So that, that is its own thing. If I get really specific though, which I feel like I've probably been too specific. I'm either too specific or I'm too vague. I'm sorry about that. But we've had this with the LGBTQ community here a lot. We've had a lot of kids that have come in that identify, as somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum, and we have had, at least in the past, trouble placing them with clinicians that are trained enough in that area to be beneficial. And so I would just say, from a leadership perspective, I don't know, just being empathetic, that's so lame, because we know, like, I feel like it comes back to like these basics all the time, but just like person-centered services and making sure that we are empathetic enough to the humans around us that we can hire the sort of people that are able to provide person-centered services to different groups of people. And being really not just tolerant, but celebratory of differences between us as staff. This idea that like we hire people who seem so different from us, and that's wonderful, because that means there's going to be that client that they really connect with that maybe I couldn't. I've had that several times where like I'll have a client and I'm like, oh man, like I just don't know that we are quite gonna click, but that's great because we just hired this person over here who is so different from me and will have a much better chance of being able to connect on that personal level and develop that therapeutic rapport more organically than me. I don't know. Does that make sense, Tessa?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I hope so.
And so I guess just to kind of start wrapping some stuff up, because we've done all the questions. What would you recommend for people who are trying to, or who will be pursuing leadership positions in human services?
What do I recommend? Listen, this is out of pocket, but it's way after hours, so I feel like I can be out of pocket, and I'm in a stupid pink hat, so I can say what I want. If they're a social worker, they should specialize in something. So specialize in something. Yeah, that is going to be so helpful, because that's just nice. And I don't even necessarily mean get more letters after your name, but that's cool. But specialize in something. I have just had I've seen a lot of success of people, like I said, one of the best clinicians that I have seen that worked here, started off with an undergraduate degree in women and gender studies, which seemed so unrelated. And some people in this rural community made fun of her for it. And she knew things that other clinicians just didn't know. Like she could just do things, and she's in management at a clinic in a slightly larger city up north now. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for specializing and having that thing that you're really good at. And then, I don't know, being empathetic. I feel like that's probably something that all four of us are good at already. So that's probably not the best answer, but
Do you have any tips for like when people are in leadership of like maybe from your experience of like learning, flaws and like successes, like what should people do, what should not people do? Kind of like go for this,
like,
avoid this.
avoid only focusing on billable hours. I'll tell you that, like being person-centered and not getting so focused on like, oh, like how much money's coming into the clinic right now, because so that's a lot of it. And then I would also say avoid anything in leadership that the people that work with you, the people that you are like, I'm not gonna say the people beneath you because that's gross, but the people that you are supporting to do, their jobs, the providers, the specialists, the clinicians, avoid things that will make them feel like you don't trust them or that you're undermining what they do. Like really let them run their show and trust yourself to have hired people that are good at their jobs. And then I would say, instead of like taking the micromanaging approach, rely more on trainings. Like just be very aware of the kind of trainings that you could do, and like, I don't know, like monthly staff meetings or whatever, to make sure that they have the skills to be successful. But that's when I've seen things go wrong, that's usually most often what it has come down to, is somebody with a managerial style that feels controlling or feels like naturally suspicious of your own employees, or makes employees feel like they're not competent, even down to like people, I hate the term entry level position because that's just nasty, because we're all specialists, like we're all, it's legitimately life or death from everybody, but like making sure that everybody, even those people that are in a position that did not require them to get a college degree to do it, just letting them all like feel that they are specialists, because they are. Does that make sense?
Like how like in therapy and social work and human services we all talk about the client is the expert in their own lives, like maybe like the worker is the expert in their work, kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, and this idea that there is not a difference between the provider and the client. We're all just humans. So like we'll do this weird thing as providers where we will like talk about clients like the client is the expert of their own. We're all the experts of our own lives, right? Like we're all just these humans. And so I'm not saying treat the people that are under you like clients, but that is kind of what I'm saying, because hopefully we're treating clients with like that person-centered, meet the client where they're at approach, and we should be doing the same thing with our workers too, like trusting them to know best for themselves, to know best for what they do, to trust that we hired people that are good at what they do and that have value, and then make sure that they know that, not through like pizza and stuff once a month, but like genuinely letting them know that they're good at what they do and that they are valued.
Okay. And then I just had one more question that came up. I don't want to push this too long, but how do you feel leadership works in a holistic sense with like, because you're the program director for CBRS, there's program directors for peer support, respite stuff, and all that. How do you feel
Right.
like leadership works across, like in working with other people, works across in a holistic way at Priestley Mental Health with all the services that we have?
So specifically at Priestley's, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess because we're going off your experience, so I'd probably say
Right.
specifically there.
Okay, so just the way that the managerial style admin is set up here, so we've got multiple programs. Each of the programs has a program manager that runs that program, and they're specific to that program. And then until recently, then I was the program director that was not, I don't want to say over the managers, but that the managers reported to, right? And so what was nice about that was they were able to run their own programs, and it did not require me or our clinical director to micromanage those programs, because they, like I feel like they felt ownership over the programs that they ran, which is, or at least I hope they did. I encouraged that. And then it was nice to set myself up at least in a position where, instead of feeling like I was just another person over them, that I was somebody that they could come to that knew about their program and that can help them out if they needed it. And was just like another support service, but for the managers, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I guess I was kind of looking also like how is it working with other people in other leadership positions at Priestley too? like when you're trying to like do holistic services for, like, say you have a client or
Yeah.
a child who comes in who needs multiple different kinds of help.
Yes.
How does
Yeah.
that work with working with other leaders to make sure that client, that child is getting all the services that they need, and like working together to make sure that like there's informed services across the board, I guess, is more of kind of what I was going
Right.
for. Does that make more
I,
sense now that I
yeah,
explained it? Okay.
Yeah. In the state of Idaho, my answer would be frequent teaming meetings, because we have that billing code that we can use, frequently getting together as the treatment team and making sure that we're all on the same page, making sure that the, if it's a minor, that the parent is able to review the treatment plan often, and ideally every 3 months. If it's somebody that's in like more long-term services, being able to get together and just like, discuss it, unpack it, and then if making sure that everybody is working toward that treatment plan. And then this is pretty specific too, but making sure that, let's say there's like a clinical plan and there's a case management plan, and there is a, here we have, like a peer support plan or a skills building plan or anything like that, making sure that the goals and all of those plans are vertically aligned with the clinical plan, right? Making sure that when somebody that is in multiple services is having successes in those services, that all of those successes are ultimately building up to successes in their therapeutic goals with their therapist.
Okay. All right. I'll let anybody else ask any other questions. I think I've gotten all the ones that were rumbling around in my brain out. So
So I have one. You sound like you have more of like I'm going to use a term that we just learned, a more laissez-faire like type of leadership. You're very open to people doing what they know how to do and letting them kind of lead themselves. But then you also mentioned earlier how some of your managers were kind of micromanaging and they like checked up on people. So how, as the overall leader, do you deal with managerial styles that may not line up with your own? Because you don't want to force them to be like you want them to be their own person. But maybe their own person has some downfalls that you want to.
And I will also say I have downfalls too. Like I already told Tessa, you heard me say I'm not a great manager. If it is going to be like, if we need somebody who's numbers focused, I'm not your guy. Like I am terrible. But if we need somebody who's like going to like connect with people and be like, hey, like how was work? And like I see that you're crying in the parking lot. I'm so sorry. Like how can like that? I like that stuff. So a lot of it is me understanding what I consider boundaries, and knowing that like in my role, let's say like the case manager, like the case management manager, right? The manager over the case management program. If she, our case manager, program manager here is not like this. So that's why I'm using this as a hypothetical example. She's not like this at all. But like if she wants to be like more numbers focused and get it done, it's her program. And me being able to be like, well, like if I am going to say things like run your show and do your program, I got to mean it, so like legitimately like, okay, that's how it goes. And then we would get together all the time, at least once a month as managers, and we kind of go over things. And if there's a problem that we are seeing like with a particular manager's style, we cover it in training. And like I know that is like so basic, maybe it sounds too basic, but I really mean that, like just training, like just so much training. I have found that like people who are not thriving in a role or who are having problems in a role, it usually just comes down to training. Like they have an idea, and once they like are like have a little better understanding of what's going on, the problems usually go away because they're, I don't know, they just understand it better. So we just do a training, open discussion. There have been a lot of times we've had open discussion, and maybe like my perspective on something will change. Like I'll think there's a problem, and then I realize like, oh, actually maybe it's going better than I thought, and I was the one that was off. But anyway.
Yeah, so kind of like everybody's trying to do their best, and so these trainings, like they're taking information and trying to apply it to their practices in a way. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then even though I did, like I do definitely want people to run their own show and to not feel like, to feel trusted and like, like they're professionals. We also, there's a lot to be said for in-house audits, and we do those in-house audits where, the manager goes through and does an audit of like, case notes from the people that are under them, and make sure that everything is like aligned with level of care guidelines with, like with Medicaid and with the state, and that everything is best practices. That is incredibly important. And then me and my role auditing managers too. And, they know they're going to get audited. We meet together, usually, a minimum of once a year to like go over those audit results with the managers, and, like employee review style. So I don't know, those things are important, but even in that sense, I don't know, going in with the, this idea that like, yes, like we did an audit, we did an employee review, we followed the form that, like they knew all the questions we were going to ask, because everybody gets asked those questions. And so even though we do those, making sure that they still know that like, yes, like, like we're following the line, we're checking all the boxes, we have like clean notes, everything is ethical, everything is upright, everything is best practices. But we're doing all that because it will help everybody be so successful and have just a better day at work. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
How do you help people, like, how do you make the auditing process like comfortable, so people aren't nervous or feel like it's a witch hunt, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I smile a lot, but not smile like I got a secret or that I'm gonna bite you. Not like that. But like I like will literally go in and just be like, hey, like I like will try to joke. I'll try to be like, maybe I'll wear this dumping cat. I don't know. Just anything so that they know that like, listen, like this is not like a ruse for me to get mad at you or to say like you're sucking it up. One thing that I do in every audit is or every employee review that I have ever done is one of the questions in the employee review is, what are your professional goals? And so I'll let them, and your personal goals too. Like I want to know, just like even outside of work, not like in a weird way, but like just like, what are your goals? And then they'll say, and then one of the questions that we always ask and write down an answer on the form is, how can I support you in reaching your professional goal? And then we'll like even write like short-term goals that I can check in on like, a lot of them are like, oh, like I want to like get into graduate school. I have written so many letters of recommendation to help our people get into graduate school. I've, so many like, I've like helped people with their essays in graduate school, like bring your essay and I'll read it, we'll look it over. Just anything to let them know that I genuinely am invested in them as a person and I don't want them to go anywhere, because there's this nasty idea out there in management, not leadership, but management, that everybody's replaceable. Right, like any one of us right now, we could be fired today and replaced by somebody else, and I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that there is not a single person ever in the professional force that is replaceable. Positions are fillable, yes, but those people and what they bring in are not replaceable at all. Like I genuinely do not want them to go. I don't want them to get fired. I don't want them to quit. I want them to like know that they are so irreplaceable and the things that they bring are so individualized and just like exclusive to them. And so just, I don't know, just like genuinely believing that and hoping that everybody can tell that I genuinely believe that. So gosh, these answers are so long. I'm so sorry. I'm like eating up all of your freaking evenings and I'm so sorry.
No, this was kind of supposed to be an hour, so I think we're doing okay.
And I have a quick question too, to just add on to there too. So we're talking about leadership and management, and I feel like you've touched on this already a little bit, but you give a lot of feedback, right, as a manager and as a leader. Like, how do you provide opportunity for people to give you feedback in your leadership / management role?
Okay, I did this cool thing, and I hope the clinic keeps doing it, but I'm not the program director anymore. But we would do this cool thing every year where we do employee satisfaction surveys, these anonymous surveys that they are like so many questions, just like rip us to pieces. Anonymous, we have like a box. I'm actually at the clinic right now. I could show you the box. But it's just like this red stripy box thing that's in the employee closet, and they can just like shove those things in there, and then as administration we would get together and take all of those, go through all the data, get the numbers, make colored pie charts and stuff out of it, and have a meeting to just be like, where are we at? Like, where are people not happy? And at least the last time we did that, people were so honest. Like, it really seemed like they were willing to just like they knew that this was not going to affect their work at all, that we were not going to do that thing where we'd sit there and be like, oh, I wonder who filled out this survey. Geez. There were people that had negative things to say about me, and like that hurt. And I was like, I got to go home and process this, because I like try to be so dang nice. But I think stuff like that is invaluable, like letting people have a say. And then the other thing is being open to employees' ideas. Like we always are hiring these people that they're so excited and just like ready to just get in there. Did I say excited wrong? I feel like I just said it wrong. They're so excited and they're so ready to just like get in and make a change and be a positive force for the community. And I think it is really important as leadership to nurture that right out of the gate, like intentionally. Like if they like have a great idea, like they want to like start up a new program, or they want to like get together, have all the kids get together for bingo, which is so weird. And it's like, let's do it. Like, I love that. I love the energy you're bringing in. And one thing that I have seen, unfortunately, a lot is these people that come in and they're so excited for like the first 6 months, and then their energy is not matched by all of the veterans there that are experiencing burnout, and then they burn out too. And so like just jumping in at the beginning and knowing like, oh, like these people are excited, they're happy to be here, they're pumped, and I want to like keep them, you know, keep that going, like let them have their moments to shine, let them have their things that they're over. I don't know, like that.
Yeah, it's like allowing them to have their passion projects so
Yes,
they can
yes.
kind of like keep it going and not referring back to like, this is how we normally do it, or this is how we typically
Mhm.
do it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
I
And
also,
I'll give, oh,
sorry.
go for it.
No, it's okay. I'll let you finish your thought.
I was just gonna give a specific example. Well, two of them. We had an employee that came in super excited and realized that our intake packet process can't be done online. People have to come in person and get a physical packet. And I didn't even realize how terrible that is. You have somebody with anxiety that wants to come in for counseling, and we're physically making them come into the office in person and get a packet from us. Terrible. And so yeah, she was just so excited to just like get that digitized and get it up on the website so they could just do it from home. I love that. And then another one, we had somebody that got some donations from somebody in the community, some hygiene kits, that asked if she could convert one of our closets into a hygiene closet. And like, I love that. Like, just encouraging, like, yes, you know what? Like, make that hygiene closet, and that is your hygiene closet. And we even highlighted it on the company Facebook page, like Emily and her hygiene closet, because it's so awesome. So I don't know, just stuff like that. Just like letting people feel that they are specialists, letting people feel that they are contributing and that they're valuable and that we care about them, because we genuinely do. So that was my answer. I'll stop. Go, Tessa.
Okay. Yeah, so I had a follow-up question about, once again, the diversity leadership kind of a thing. How do you avoid tokenism in leadership roles?
Yeah, I got it. Okay, I'll tell you one. This is gonna be really personal. I mean, not too personal, but like it's anyway. I'm just gonna say it. Listen, it's after hours. Okay, so if I sound unprofessional, I'm really sorry. But there was once a time, maybe like 2 years ago, that somebody accused me indirectly of ageism, because the last several hires had been people just fresh out of college. So like between like 21 and 25. Had not been intentional on my part. They just were really, really good applicants. And so somebody else in our administration made it a point to hire an older woman simply because she was an older woman. And like simply like, we just have to do that so that people don't think we're just hiring younger people. And it has ended up really well, but it was really hard for that lady, because when she got hired, she had a bachelor's degree from she got a bachelor's degree in 1988 in liberal arts and sciences. That was it. It was just like a liberal arts degree, which I mean, I love a good liberal arts degree. That's awesome. But no additional training outside of that. And it was really hard for her to have to feel like she needed so much more training than everybody else to get to everybody else's level, because of that. And so my answer with that example now, and she did great in the end. Like she honestly did great, and I'm so happy to have her. But my answer with the tokenism thing is hire. Maybe this sounds dumb. If this sounds dumb, pretend I didn't say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Hire to the client needs. Like have your clients in mind. Like we know our caseload. We know the people that we that we provide services for, and so like in the interview process, like I will have them in mind. Like even individuals, as people come in, and I'll be thinking like, oh, like you're who they need, or or you're who they could need. So not like going through to like check diversity boxes, not going through to be like, oh, like we don't have one of those here, but going through to be like, oh, like I was so excited. Tessa, do you remember what was his name? It's been a long day. That guy that just moved to go get a degree in sports psychology.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I know who you're talking about. I don't remember his name. Was he Jonathan too? Because I know we have another Jonathan.
we've had a lot of Jonathans. Anyway, it'll come. Chandler.
Mhm.
Yeah, Chandler. Um, I was so excited when we hired Chandler because in the interview he made a comment about how he loved basketball. And we had all these little boys that were like always wanting to play basketball with me. And I don't know if you can tell looking at me, I don't play a lot of basketball. Okay. That's not for me. And so like the hire for him, it was not like to check a box, but it was like, you are who we need. Like you're who the clients need. Like you're perfect for this spot because you can come in and you can be passionate and you can be authentic and you don't have to like fake liking basketball like I'd been doing for 3 months. Um, and so that is the answer that I will give for this rural community is just hiring to to the clients and trying to be person-centered even in the hiring process, like person-centered to our clients even when our clients are not in the room, and it is the interview process for new hires. I hope that was an okay answer.
Yeah, no, that was good. I like that.
Thanks.
I think that was all the questions I had. So I don't know if Tessa, if you had any more, or Candace.
Not that I can think of.
I didn't.
Okay, and I mean we hit our 7:30 mark, so we got an hour. Woohoo!
So
All
that's
right. Colton, you can, if you want, you can pop off. I was just gonna plan now that we are all officially here as a group.
Thank
Might be a good idea to plan.
okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you. I hope you all have just a super successful rest of your week.
Okay. Thank you,
You
Colton. We
too.
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Bye.
All right. Well, how did you guys feel about the interview? Oh, I should stop recording. Stop.